G'day guys, welcome back. My name is Wildkard. Thank you for watching the Wildkard Rugby Show. Like, comment, and subscribe. And yes, everybody knows there's absolutely nothing worse than losing to the Waratahs at home. So I am very, very sorry. And to be honest, I am not very happy about the way that the Waratahs won the game either with goal kicking. And we're going to talk about that in a minute because I did a lot of research this week about the style of rugby that the Waratahs are pursuing in the second half. And I absolutely do not agree. And I know a lot of you guys are going to say, oh, the goal kicking worked. But hey, I'm going to talk to you about why it's not working and how the statistics no longer support that this strategy is a sustainable way to win the game. And the fact that the Waratahs won is not a statement that the Waratahs actually made the right strategic decision, but more of a statement that the Brumbies weren't good enough. Okay, so yeah, just keep that in mind. We'll talk about that after we talk about the most important part of the game, and that is the scrummaging. Now, obviously, the scrummaging last week, I talked about the interpretation of the ball ring in was really, the referees really hammered down across the board in Super Rugby last week. I actually went and watched some, rugby overseas. The ball ring in's not really that much of a thing in like, especially like in France. It's really not nearly, like once you watch some of the stuff like overseas, you're actually starting to see that, yeah, maybe the boring in is getting a bit out of hand here in Super Rugby, and the referee had to do something to hammer it down. And I was really, interested to see this week if the teams are going to adjust to that. And to my surprise, both the Brumbies and the Waratahs really adjusted to the boring in. I don't think there was a single penalty given away for boring in from Angus Gardner, who last week gave a yellow card against the Hurricanes loose head prop for boring in, even though I felt like the Waratahs, the Hurricanes clearly had the ascendancy, clearly had a full momentum and dominance on the loose head side, and the referee still penalized him for, I guess, illegally obtaining that dominance. So this week, both teams were actually much squarer in the scrum in terms of pushing. There was a fair bit of, I guess, like parallel crabbing, like sideways movements, but there wasn't much wheeling like we saw, especially from the Waratahs in the previous rounds, which indicates to me that the referee definitely made a difference and definitely the players have adjusted to that. However, I did notice a little bit of dark hearts out of Mr. Jem's 204 slipper, and I would like to talk about it because I really think that it's quite interesting, and I think that referees' interpretation here needs to be rethink and relooked at. So we're gonna look at two scrums where Jem's slipper actually won the penalty for the Brumbies, and I do think that slipper has pulled the scrum down, and not because the referee's decision, which is the Botha flattening, pancaking and flattening out. So let's have a look at this and let's talk about what we are seeing here. Number one, you will notice immediately Jem Slipper, who's on the right here on the right hand side, and this is Botha here, has an underhook. What's called an underhook on Botha. Now, the underhook, you can see his elbow down. He's grabbed behind the shoulder blades here for Botha. If you watch UFC and if you do wrestling or jiu-jitsu, you would know what the underhook is. The underhook essentially allows you to control a player's, I guess, the shoulder axis. So if you control one side of the shoulder, you are if you control the hook here, you are able to actually maneuver a player's upper body with relative ease. And the only place that can give you more leverage to maneuver someone's upper body is grabbing them behind the neck. It's called the what do they call it? The neck hook, or to grab them by the neck, right? And you see this a lot. They will try the UFC. They'll try to grab someone's neck like this, and then another player will try to the other fighter will try to push him off. And once they pull it off, you see them try to hook the arm behind the back, and that is all because they can, once they get the hook in, they can swing them around quite easily and get the takedown that they need, because that basically controls the opponent's center of gravity, if that makes sense. It controls their center of gravity, the upper body center of gravity, which is like the cross section between the head and the shoulder. And once you control that center of gravity, you can maneuver them around with a fair bit of ease. And this underhook here, it's already an indication to me that Jem Slipper is trying to control the upper body of Botha. And if we just play on a little bit, you can see that he's already putting pressure on that hook on his left hand. As the ball comes, you can see that it's actually pinched in. He's definitely applying pressure and trying to tilt the upper body sideways and destabilize Botha here. And he's folded the scrum in. And to me, the gem slipper, not only that he folded the scrum in, but he also coiled himself up a little bit so that Botha flattens out. So if you look at, if you can do this with your hands as well, right? You can do this yourself right now. If you put hands together, you can, you clench your fingers together, and what you find is if you coil up one hand, the other hand flattens out, right? And it's the same thing. If you coil this hand, the other side flattens out, right? And I think that's what James Slipper is doing. He's coiled up to make Botha flatten out, flatten out, and he's pulled Botha down by using essentially what's called an underhook in wrestling. And despite that, the referee actually sees the fact that Botha's flattened out and given it a penalty for the Brumbies. Yeah, I don't think that is the right decision here. Here is another scrum that is, again, let's have a look at what James Slipper does here. Once again, he's kind of gone for a bit of a different grip here. He's gone a bit longer because the referee's right in front of him. But still, once the engagement comes in, he's pulled back and he's got that almost basically an underhook again onto Botha. And this time it's a little bit lower. Last time he's higher, but this time it's lower. So it's not quite as tight of a hook as he did in that first video we saw here. But let's just watch a little bit more. He's changing the bind and he's clearly gripped down a lot more. And this is something that we see from Andrew Porter from Ireland. He likes the longer grip, grabbing the long end of the jersey, and he pulls it down from the long end to try to maneuver your hip. The hip is another center of gravity. You can maneuver the shoulder or the hip to try to maneuver someone, get someone to set them off balance, right? So he's going for a longer switch to a longer bind. And just watch a bit more. Once again, it looks like Slipper has coiled up, causing Botha to pancake down, right? It looks like he's pulled him with a longer bind, and with the pull, he's coiled up from that pull, and he's actually pulled the scrum down. Let me know your thoughts. And by looking at this, the referee surprisingly penalized Botha once again for pancaking. And looking at both videos, I think Slipper is one that's causing Botha to pancake and not Botha deliberately pancaking to try to collapse the scrum. And I do think that referees need to have a look at this. And I don't think the referees made a right decision here, just based on these two scrums that we saw here. Now, let's talk about the goal kicking, and let's talk about the research that I've done extensively this week. So, yeah, let's go back a little bit. Last week, we saw the Waratahs come out in the first half against the Blues. Absolutely, say what you want about how many tries they botched over the first half, but absolutely, what do you call it? Absolutely determination is probably the best word. Determined to play rugby to assert dominance for the first half. And despite all the botched tries, all the knock-ons and held ups, the Waratahs still won the first half quite comfortably. Right? If we look at the first half this week, once again, the Waratahs did not entertain the idea of goal kicking. And when they were determined to assert the dominance by scoring tries. There was one point where the Waratahs had a player yellow carded. 14 players on the field. They still went for the lineouts and got a try with 14 players on the field. That is quite impressive, to say the least. And if you were to ask any Kiwi commentary, they would have said, hey, should have taken the 3, mate. and run the clock down a little bit and be grateful that you've got 3 points whilst you're down 14 to 14 players, which I do think is the wrong idea. I do think attacking with 14 players is a lot easier than defending with 14 players. And even if you don't score, by holding on to the ball, you're not going to concede any points. And, defending with 14, there's definitely a gap somewhere on the field, right? So I do think that the Waratahs not only strategically made the right decision, but also just showed determination, grit, and heart in the first half, just like they did against the Blues. Come out in the second half against the Blues, immediately the Waratahs capitulated. They kicked 3 points right away and never looked like they were going to regain the momentum like they did in the first half. Never looked like they were in the fight and just completely got dominated in the second half. This week against the Brumbies, they came out, conceded a try, and then they decided to kick 3 points to finish off the game. The fact that it worked against the Brumbies is not a sign that the strategy works. It's actually a sign that the Brumbies were a little bit. I don't know. I don't want to get hate mail from the Brumbies fan. Let's just say the Brumbies were a little bit surprised by that. We're a little bit under pressure to perform. And the reason that this strategy, even though it worked against the Brumbies, it often does not work. It works, it fails to work more often than not these days. Okay? Basically, I did some research looking at NFL, the American football. And this style of rugby that the Waratahs play in the second half actually has a name for it in NFL. They call it prevent. Okay? Prevent is essentially the word prevent used as a noun. I know, brilliant. So in the strategy of prevent, there's two. It's basically a strategy that is deployed by the team that is winning going into the final quarter of the game. And they basically have determined that whatever points we've got is enough, and let's just try to hold on to win the game, right? And the idea of this prevent strategy has two main focus. Number one is run the clock down, okay? And number two is to minimize risk at all cost. Play as safe as you possibly can and run the clock down to finish off the last quarter of the game. That is prevent. That is how England rugby plays, and they failed utterly at Six Nations. They played prevent against the Irish, they played prevent against Italy, and they lost both games. And ironically, they came out and stopped playing prevent against France. They almost won. Against Scotland did not kick penalties against France until the very end. They did not play prevent. They won against the French. So the strategy of prevent is already something in rugby, and it's something that is already failing at the international levels. So it's already a strategy that's outdated. It's no longer working. It's no longer something that maybe 5 or 6 years ago, 5 or maybe 8 years ago, 2 World Cup cycles ago, it's the way to win the World Cup. It is no longer the case. It's already seeing cracks. Now, more importantly, in the American football, they actually done statistic studies and they found that the team playing prevent has consistently underperformed the team that is chasing the game in the final quarter. So the team that plays prevent has consistently lost the fourth quarter, and sometimes, a lot of times, lost the game as a result of playing prevent in that final quarter of American football. And I just really when I saw this, it's like a light bulb just went off my head. How many times have we seen England doing exactly this? They're winning the game for 60 minutes and they start milking penalties and talking to the referee to try to run the clock down, only for them to completely choke and lose the game in the last 5 minutes or 10 minutes. This is exactly what's happening to England. They're failing with the prevent, and this is the stat. And statistically, it's no longer a viable strategy, even in American football. And we are witnessing the Waratahs pursuing that exact strategy in the second half right now for 2 weeks in a row. So yes, we did win against the Brumbies, but that's more to say about the Brumbies not being that good than this is actually playing prevent is actually a winnable, a sustainable, sustainable strategy, long-term strategy for the team. Now, there's many reasons. So you might be asking, Wildkard, why is the prevent failing all of a sudden? There are many, many reasons for it. There's no, one of the reasons, obviously, if you're playing super safe, you're no longer presenting yourself as a threat to the opposition. You're basically giving the opposition free reign to attack you. And then as a result, they actually can take more risk. And as a result of taking more risk, they actually end up converting more points. Because you're not applying the pressure. We see that in England all the time. They try to milk penalties, not trying to go for the tries, and giving time and, a peace of mind, essentially, for the opposition to run free against you, against your defense, and suddenly you're losing the game, right? That's one of the reasons. Another reason is actually quite interesting. I just want to show you one of my favorite charts of all time. Everybody loves charts, right? This is the S&P 500. You might notice something. It seems like the stock market takes a really long time to rally and only to suddenly drop really sharply, right? We're long time to rally and suddenly, I'm pretty sure we're facing another massive drawdown, if not historical drop, that's coming up in the next 6 months, right? So obviously because of the Iran conflict, right? So we're gonna facing a massive drawdown right now. But the main point here is it takes a long time to rally, right? And then all of that gang that's picked up over 6 months or a year, it's lost in 2 months. Why is that? Because the emotion of fear, the fear of losing, is a lot scarier than winning. Everybody's afraid of losing a lot more than winning. That is why it takes a year to get 10% and then a month and a half to lose 10% because of fear. So when you play prevent, you are literally feeding into your fear of losing. And as a result, you are more likely to lose because you are literally, because you're literally playing into it. You have given up winning by playing not to lose, and as a result, you have capitulated to the fear of losing. And that's, again, it's just science. It's not a sustainable strategy because you are playing into psychologically one of the worst things that you should be playing into, right? That's another thing. And then, yeah, so you might be asking, so Wildkard, what should the team do in the second half when you're leading? Now, obviously, what I'm about to tell you is a lot easier said than done. But one of the things that, if we think of when I was a kid, I like to play real-time strategy games on the computer, and one of my favorite games is called StarCraft. Okay, you may have played it, or maybe you've seen it. Essentially, it's a computer game, right? Don't worry too much about the computer game. But one of the concepts that they were there's literally a university degree you can go to do at UC Berkeley or something that teaches you how to play StarCraft. And one of the concepts of how to win StarCraft, I thought it can actually be applied here in rugby. And we may see some of that. Let me talk about the concept. The concept is, when you are winning, you want to take your advantage and snowball that into a bigger advantage. You don't want to be thinking about how do I hold on to this win, this small win I've got. You don't want to be thinking about how to hold on to that lead. You want to think about how to take the lead that you have and snowball it into a bigger, overwhelming advantage. And that is the only way that can consistently see you win games in StarCraft. Now, obviously, StarCraft is different. It's a computer game. It's different from rugby. But the concept can be applied to rugby. This concept is already being seen in the Springboks. The Springboks likes to find the little weakness of the opposition, and they just abuse the absolute shit out of it. Right? Like the scrum against the Irish. They don't even care if they're not scoring. They just wanted to keep scrumming against you because they know that you're weak and get your players to send off and get your entire stadium booing. They don't care. They don't care. They know that's their strength, and they try to take as much advantage as they can out of that. We see that with other strategies or the kicking game. The way that the Springboks do these box kicks up and under, they always repeatedly targeting the same player in the same position because they have identified that there's an edge with their own chasers under the high ball. They just keep doing it until you lose. They keep doing it until Wildkard Smith gets the turnover at the breakdown. That's how the Springboks already playing, and that is something that I think the Waratahs needs to think about instead of going back to a strategy that already statistically all around the world in multiple sports has proven does not work anymore. So yeah, hopefully that made sense to all of you guys watching. And let's talk about some other thing. My goodness, it's been 20 minutes. Let's talk about some other things. So yeah, I'm sorry if you're a Brumbies fan and you're gonna call me biased. I do think that the fact that the goal kicking actually worked against you just a testament of your players unable to cope under pressure. In fact, the Waratahs, the only reason that the goal kicking strategy works is you, the Brumbies, screwing up. The only way this can work is if the Brumbies, the opposition, screws up and gives away stupid penalties again and again and again and again. And that's exactly what the Brumbies did. If the Brumbies don't give away the penalties, the Waratahs could not possibly have scored any more points in the second half. And none of the penalties were like forced penalties like the Springboks did with the scrum. Some of them were scrum penalty, but it's not like guaranteed scrum penalties. It's like the Waratahs had a good scrum. They did get a penalty from it, but it's not like, it's not like overwhelming dominance as a result of overwhelming dominance consistently applied to you, and then you were forced to give away penalties. It's just like you were sloppy in the scrum, and then you gave away a penalty. You were sloppy in the breakdowns, you gave away a penalty. You were offside, gave away the penalty. And the Waratahs took those, and they beat you. So it's not really because the strategy works. It's because the Brumbies play really, really badly. And in fact, the first penalty the Waratahs kicked, I thought that was fair enough because the score were leveled. You wanted to give yourself, and you just conceded like a bunch of tries without any reprieve. You want to give yourself a bit of a boost, which I'm fine with at the first penalty. But the second penalty the Waratahs took was just, it didn't even make sense because you were still 10 minutes left on the clock, and you kicking the second penalty only made you 6 points ahead. You still could lose the game by the Brumbies scoring one try. It's still one try away from you to lose, the converted try away from you to lose the game. You haven't really materialistically changed much of the game. You haven't materialistically really given you that much of an advantage by kicking the second three, and you've just literally given away time for Brumbies to 10 minutes for the Brumbies to get back at you, to score back at you. So the second penalty, only reason the second penalty existed or worked is that they were hoping that the Brumbies was going to give away a third penalty, and which the Brumbies did. And there was, you're going to say, hey, that worked, but it only worked because the Brumbies were really bad at it, right? And if you're against like a Kiwi team, they're not going to give. What happens if they don't give you the third penalty? You're going to concede a try and even lost the game. And you wish you had taken that second penalty and converted that into 7. And maybe run the clock down a bit more and only gave your opposition 5 minutes to score against you instead of a 10. Right? So the decision making there was just not good from the Waratahs. And the fact that the Brumbies just gave away those penalties was even worse. So yeah, that's how that's my my analysis. Let me know what you think, and let's move on. Sid Harvey, outstanding tonight. He's really good goal kicker. I mean, this is his debut season. It's already better than all the goal kickers the Brumbies got, right? So again, I don't know what Brumbies are doing with their 10s and goal kicking. I mean, I don't think they miss any goals tonight, but still, I just think that the Brumbies, the Waratahs are doing a better job in terms of bringing up new players. I do think that the Waratahs did a really good job shutting down the Brumbies rolling more, and as a result, the Brumbies weren't very keen on running some of those mauls as a result. So that's one area I think the Waratahs definitely targeted. And then outside of that, I thought Jay Gordon was looking a lot better this week than last week. He was playing a bit more heads-up rugby, spotting the space in front of him, and just being much more, much quicker getting to the breakdown than he did last week. So I thought that was really, really good. But outside of that, let's talk about the stats of the game. Let's talk about the stats of the game before this drag on for like 3 hours. 4 tries to 3, 488 run meters to 415, 174 carries for the Brumbies, to the Waratahs 102. 15 turnovers conceded for the Brumbies, 16 for the Waratahs, 118 tackles made for the Brumbies, 25 missed tackles. Waratahs 254 tackles made, 22 missed tackles. So the one thing the Brumbies did actually do really well is finishing the first half really strong and start in the second half really, really strong. So the Brumbies scored 2 tries in about 10 minutes between the break at halftime, right? 5 minutes before halftime, and then 5 minutes coming out of halftime. So they did a really good job there, and then only to completely just not able to back themselves anymore after that, which is a little bit disappointing. In fact, the Brumbies were so good coming out in the second half. I reckon most of these missed tackles probably occurred during that first period, where it just looked really, really bad. Like the Waratahs everybody was doing this like jersey grabbing tackle technique, and it was really, really bad to watch. But somehow the Brumbies just just wasn't able to continue with that pressure. 22 kicks in game for the Brumbies, 30 for the Waratahs. Again, prevent kicking territory is the main goal. 562 kick meters for the Waratahs, 520 for the Brumbies. Most of these kick areas for the Waratahs are probably from the second half. The first half, there were a lot more boarding hand play for the Waratahs there. Set play, 1 line out loss for the Brumbies, 5 loss for the Waratahs. Yeah, it was horrendous. A lot of them were stolen as well from the Brumbies, so that's one key area the Brumbies have definitely won. Scrum, 5 scrums for the Brumbies, 5 scrums for the Waratahs, 1 loss each. Like I said, I thought the Slipper scrums should have been a penalty against Jem Slipper, but let me know your thoughts there. Penalties conceded. Both teams are guilty of getting away way too many penalties. Brumbies, 11 penalties, and a lot of kickable ones in the second half. The Waratahs as well, repeated penalties given away, especially in I think it was in the first half. Most of these were given out. There was one period. Yeah, there was one period. There was just penalties after penalties, and what's his name? One of the players was sent off. P. Samu was sent off for repeated penalties against his team. So yeah, the pressure the pressure definitely works against the Waratahs. So there was 1 yellow card against P. Samu for team infringement essentially. But anyway, let's do a quick summary of the game. Oh boy, 30 minutes already in the review. Whew. So yeah, there was 9 minutes in the game. There was repeated penalties. P. Samuel gets sent off for a yellow card. Brumbies kept the pressure on. The Brumbies weren't going for the lineouts and tap and go instead, because I think the Waratahs were giving them some problems in terms of more. But eventually, Lockie Shaw goes in for the try. 7 points to... The first try was scored for the Waratahs 2 minutes in. Just came out, just completely, completely just went for it. Lots of early pressure. Andrew Callaway made a bit of a break, just popping the ball off. There was some good hands between the forwards, and eventually they got really close. Pick and drive. Halaholo goes over for the first try for the Waratahs, 7 points to 0. And then 9 minutes in, Brumbies fights back, 7 points to 7. And then just before half time, 16 minutes into the game, the Waratahs gets another try on the ball with Andrew Callaway. There was a little kick behind the what is it called? There was a little kick behind from Harvey. He gets the Waratahs floods the breakdown, gets a penalty, and they back themselves to go for the line out. And then a bunch of crash balls, and eventually the ball went out wide to Andrew Callaway, completely open, ran in for the try, 14 points to 7. The 30 minutes of the game, there was a third try for the Waratahs. There was what's his name? Jorgensen went into a tackle. He stripped the ball, and then he just ran like 40 meters down the other side. He got tackled, and then the Waratahs quickly get the ball out. Jay Gordon just swung the ball out wide. Joey Walton got the ball center field, and the Brumbies defense was just completely out of position. No one was in position to make the tackle. Everybody was offside, and Joey Walton just ran through, pretty much jogged through the defense for a try, 21 points to 7. Just before halftime, the Brumbies fought back. 4 minutes extra time was played in the first half. Lots of pressure, lots of build up, and then eventually there was there was a lot of build up. There was lots of repeated penalties, and eventually the Brumbies went over for the try. It was Charlie Cale. It was a just big drive from him. Went in for the try. Halftime score 14 points to 21. 45 minutes in the game, coming out of the sheds, the Brumbies again in the front foot. Just every time the Brumbies carried the ball here, the Waratahs were missing tackles. People were jersey grabbing, and eventually you're giving out enough space. Shaw went over for his second try, 21 points to 21. 5 minutes into the second half. 64 minutes into the game, there was a scrum penalty for the Waratahs, and taking the 3. And I was like, oh boy, 24 points to 21. 70 minutes into the game, another penalty to the Waratahs. This one I thought they should have gone for the line out, but they take another 3. 27 points to 21. Materialistically, it hasn't really changed the game, and there's still 10 minutes left. But sure enough, the Brumbies could not build any momentum. There was another scrum 73 minutes in. There was another penalty against the Brumbies, and the Waratahs kick another 3. 30 points to 21. The Waratahs tick themselves, and finally, with 5 minutes left, the Brumbies try to give themselves one last chance. There were more penalties given out right in front of the goalposts of the Waratahs. Brumbies tack and go, and lots of pick and drive, and eventually Luke Reimer went over for the try with about a minute and a half left on the clock. 28 points to 30, and then after that, the Brumbies couldn't quite run themselves out of their own half. Another penalty was given out on the 80th minute mark. Could have kicked another 3, I guess, for Waratahs, but they kicked the ball out for the easy 2 points win. So let me know your thoughts about this game. Let me know your thoughts about the strategy of prevent, and I would like to see how this is going to go against another New Zealand team for the Waratahs. And I don't think this is a good look for the Brumbies. The fact that they lost to the prevent, and let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one. Cheers.